Hello, my name is Father Tighe, and this is our 17th segment of our journey of faith in the light of the cross. And in this segment, we continue with the story of the Samaritan woman. But now we emphasize that by baptism, she is transformed. And so we see our theme. The fountain of life wells up in the Samaritan woman and makes her a life-giving apostle to the Samaritans. This is very important. She's transformed into a life giver. So we now go to our next slide, and we see here, the woman said, "Sir," now I added the Greek word Kyrie. You know, in Mass we say Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. Sir is a good translation in this case, but our ears, you see, we're not hearing what John is trying to do. It's very important that we hear the word Kyrie, not just sir, okay? Sir, give me this water that I may never thirst again. So she receives it, and this is a foreshadowing of baptism. Jesus said, go call your husband. Now we'd say, oh, Lord, why did you say that to embarrass her? We're going to see that it's essential that if our baptisms are going to come to their fullness, we have to understand ourselves, crucify ourselves, open ourselves up, and give ourselves to God so God can work more powerfully through us. And that is what Jesus is doing for the Samaritan woman. She said, I do not have a husband. Now, what's interesting about the word husband, andros, is it means both man and husband. And this is difficult for us, but there's a play on word. People in those days could hear what tone you're having, what connotation you're giving to the word at that moment. Jesus says, you are right, you have had 5 men husbands. She really wasn't married to them. And the one you have now is not your husband. You are telling the truth. What is Jesus doing? He's saying to her, you have sought from men what only God can give. And what has she been seeking? She's been seeking to become a life giver. Most women like this who ran through men at that time were trying to get pregnant and they couldn't get pregnant. And they felt lost, they felt cursed, they felt abandoned by God. And Jesus comes now to give life to such women. But they have to understand they can only get that life-giving power from God. Now, we go back and he says, you've been seeking only from men what only God can give. John is also hearing and speaking in Hebrew. And Baal means Lord, and it also means husband, the same word. And see, again, the connotation. And in the Greek, it's very similar. It's plays on word here. And we have to get used to that. But anyway, you are telling the truth. The woman said, Lord, I can tell you are a prophet. See, she catches on. He is representative. He is the image of God. And he's going to do for her what 5 men nor 5 husbands could ever do, transform her into a life giver. And she says here, I can tell you are a prophet. She's growing in understanding of who he is and what he's doing. A prophet is not a teacher. See, Nicodemus reduced him to a teacher. She's allowing Jesus to grow, and she's allowing him to give her greater understanding. And now we go on to the next slide in the next verses. She said to him, our ancestors worshipped on this mountain. Gerizim is a mountain right next to them in Samaria. And this is very important because that's where Jacob had his well. And Jacob said, truly, this is the gateway to heaven. The Jews forbid the Samaritans to come to the temple in Jerusalem. So they built their own temple at Gerizim. See, but your people worship only in Jerusalem, and you throw us out. You don't allow us in. Jesus said, believe me, woman. The hour is coming when you will worship neither here at Gerizim nor in Jerusalem. You people, now that's a sort of a harsh, but John is putting it in strong words. You people worship what you do not understand. The Samaritans don't understand, although they know the Bible and they study the Bible as we saw, she understands, they still don't understand. We worship, we is Jews. Jesus is identifying himself as a Jew. We worship what we understand for salvation is from the Jews. It is coming primarily from the Jews. Okay, we have our next slide. The hour is here. Now, Jesus is saying, for true worshipers to worship the Father in spirit and truth. True worshipers are people who bring God the truth. They allow God to work through them as they are, not as they wish they were. And the Father seeks such worshipers, people who can be truthful with him, because that allows God's love to fill them and transform them. God is spirit, and he must be worshiped in spirit and in truth. You must surrender life, spirit, your breath to him, and let him breathe life into you, but only insofar as we tell the truth. The woman said, I know the Messiah is coming, the anointed. See, she's growing. So she jumps right ahead from what Jesus is saying about true worshipers and says, the anointed one is coming and he will tell us everything. And Jesus says, I am he, the one speaking to you. Jesus never did this with Nicodemus because he was holding Jesus down, calling him a teacher. She's allowing Jesus to grow in her life because she's growing in her life. And now our Samaritan woman has grown into a life giver. She is now an evangelist. And we go to our last slide. Just then the disciples returned and were amazed that he was speaking at a woman. Remember this? Decent man never speaks to a decent woman, but no one said anything. The woman left her water jar and went to the people of the town. You remember we began the story. She came at noontime to avoid the other women of the town from putting her down and calling her names. Now she is so full of joy and life. She goes exactly to the people who she went to the well to avoid. So she's totally transformed. She said, come and see a man who told me everything I have ever done. Now, we don't want to be humiliated. Jesus didn't tell her, oh, look at what you've been doing with your life. No, he helped her understand why she was so frustrated, why she isolated herself, why she felt like the walking dead before Jesus came into her life. She was seeking from men what only God could give. When she surrendered herself to God and she allowed God to breathe life into her and share the truth back with God, she is transformed into this life-giving power. She's an apostle of Jesus, and this is interesting. She's the first apostle in John's gospel, a Samaritan woman who is a slave of sin. She is the first great apostle, evangelist in John's gospel. And we go on there. Could he be the Messiah? And they went out to see Jesus. They didn't go out to hear him teach them. They went out to Jesus, who is this mysterious presence, this unfolding mystery of God, this tree of life. Whereas Nicodemus kept trying to reduce him to a tree of knowledge so he could control it, Jesus just pushed Nicodemus and walked right on. With this woman, he took time. And it all comes to fruition. And Jesus is taking time for all of us when we surrender to him and allow him to grow us into bigger people who allow God to know the truth about us. We don't hide because we know God loves us and he's not going to humiliate us with the truth. He's going to transform us into life givers, not despite the truth, but exactly through it. God works through her weaknesses and faults. And we come back to that beautiful hymn that we were singing in the last meeting. Are craving. They're poor people. They're in this world who are craving the pleasures only the world can afford. None. The wondrous treasure Jesus gives to this Samaritan woman. Do you remember the melody? Sing it with me now. Fill my cup, O Lord. I lift it up, O Lord. Come and quench this thirsting of my soul. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Fill my cup, fill it up, and make me whole. I hope God does that for you. He does it for all of us. I hope you feel God working in you, and you allow God to make you bigger with the truth. Thank you very much for making this journey of faith with us in this 17th segment in the light of the cross.